You've tuned into the DOHP Signal. I'm your host, Derek O'Hanley, former military medic, author of Photos from the Front Lines, and the founder of DOHP. My guest today is Ernie Stevens. He's a retired police officer, managing director of the Justice Center, and he's the star of Ernie and Joe, Crisis Cops. Ernie, how we doing today, buddy?
Derek, thanks for having me on, man. Great to talk to you today.
I'm really honored. Like I said, I know we've been connected for a while, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk a little bit before this, and got to see the film very recently, and it really moved me, and I'm so happy that it's out there, and I can't imagine the impact that it's had on society, on first responders, and on you yourself. So for the folks who maybe don't know about you, just give us a little bit about your background and kind of the path you've walked up to this point.
Sure. Well, now that I'm getting older, the path gets longer. Born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. My whole life lived here in Texas. I was a police officer in a smaller municipality upon when I finished college at a place called Terrell Hills, small little agency here in San Antonio, one of the many municipalities. And then in 1994, I joined the San Antonio Police Department and spent the next 27 years there doing various things, right? Starting out in patrol, became a field training officer for some years, was on the DWI unit, the task force there, and then was on the gang unit, a unit called the Tactical Response Unit. About 15 years into my career, I had an opportunity to take crisis intervention training and kind of had that aha moment. Like, wow, this really affected me. It's something I took a lot of interest in and started help stand up the department's first mental health unit back in 2008 of December.
Was there a particular powder keg incident that kind of got you launched in the behavioral health track, or just kind of a cumulative exposure of all the things that you kind of have to do as a police officer and seeing the
Yeah, it was
futility
none
of
of
it?
that. So yeah,
Okay.
it was none of that. No. So what happened was I was assigned to the gang unit at the time, and a training came out for crisis intervention training, and it was my day off. And they were looking for volunteers. So you know how I got signed up. And when I came back to work, they told me, hey, you have to go to this crisis intervention training. But we'd never heard of it. It had never been offered before. And this was the Houston Police Department was coming to San Antonio to train us. I was like, well, it sounds kind of cool. What's it about? And when I got the description about, well, it's how to interact with somebody in a mental health crisis,
Hmm.
it's learning about stakeholders and resources. I'm like, what are you doing signing me up for this? Like, no thanks. I don't, I appreciate it, but I don't want to go to this. Like, I'm on the gang unit, man. We kick in
Yeah,
doors. We chase bad guys, right? But my supervisor told me, well, we've already signed you up for it and turned your name into accounting, so you got to go.
voluntold.
And I'm like, man, what's the silver lining in this? Well, I could go to school during the day for a whole week and sleep in my bed at night, which was a change. And I got a weekend off prior to the training. So I'm like, all right, I'll make the best of it, right? But when I got to the training, it was at a church and there was like a huge training manual they handed me when I walked in, a lanyard with my name, assigned seating. I mean, everything I didn't want started to happen. And then the training began, and it was like, this was early on. So we had classes like psychopharmacology and the development of the brain. And I was sitting there going, man, when is lunch and what time do we get out? Like, what am I doing? How did I get put in here? But Derek, sometimes like God has a way of putting you in a place where he needs you at the right time.
Hmm.
And it was on a Thursday. The training's almost done. I'm suffering through it. We're doing role plays, everything that all the cops hate doing, right?
Uh-huh.
They hate it. And a lady from the National Alliance from on Mental Illness,
Hmm.
NAMI,
Hmm.
came and spoke to us. And she was, man, I say elderly, I'm catching up to her. She was in her 60s,
Mm.
late 60s, and began to talk to us about her son that had mental illness
Mm.
and how she's had to call the police before, and it's always turned into just a knockdown, screaming fight, an
Shit show.
arrest,
Yeah.
or he ends up in the hospital and he's so medicated he can barely walk and his tongue swells up but she told us something during that portion that she was interacting with us, and she said, I'm probably going to have to call 911 again, and there's a good chance that somebody in this room might have to respond to my son,
Hmm.
and if you do, there's a possibility he's going to scare you, and worst case scenario, you might shoot and kill my son.
Mm,
But it's what she said next. She said, but if that happens, it's okay because you have no idea what it's like to live somebody with a serious mental illness, and you have a family that I want you to go home to safe.
mm,
Now that kind of hit me. I'm looking around going, did I hear her right? Because I'm
mm.
a parent, and there's no way I'm going to say that in front of a group of police officers, strangers, whatever,
Yeah.
So I waited till she finished, and I went up to her and I said, Miss Janine, I got to ask you, like, why did you make that statement? Why did you say it's okay? And her response really stifled me. She said, well, you know what my biggest fear is? And I said, no, ma'am, I don't. Because, well, my biggest fear is that he will outlive me. And who's going to take care of him?
Mm,
She goes, who, the jail, the hospitals? Because they don't do anything for us.
yeah.
It just makes things worse. And then she challenged me. She goes, and besides, what are you going to do about it? Just as a matter of fact. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, first of all, don't challenge a cop to do something because they're dumb enough to take the challenge, right? I said, well, ma'am, I don't know, but I do know this. I will make you a promise. On Monday morning, I'm going to join NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
Mm,
I'm going to learn about this organization and I'm going to take the rest of this training a lot serious.
mm,
And I'm going to finish this class with my best effort.
hmm
And I kept my word. That Monday, I joined NAMI. I studied hard. I really had an aha moment, uh,
mm,
did the best I could. And then it just continued just to fuel a fire inside of me that I couldn't get enough information fast enough.
hmm
I wanted to know, like, what did the community feel when they had to call 911? Were they scared? Were they confused? Like, what did the officers truly know about responding to
mm,
somebody with a mental health crisis? Because before that class, I knew nothing
yeah.
other than what I saw on television, right? And once, I really got a desire to pursue this, I asked the chief, hey, chief, I want to start a mental health unit. I want to train everybody on the department, right? That's a story in itself. Happy to get
Yeah.
into that.
I'll bet.
But yeah, it was that conversation took 5 years really to make that happen.
Mm, wow. Well, I can say that your effort was not in vain. I'm sure you can see that as well. And I saw you guys would bring some of the National Alliance folks in to train fellow officers once you had crisis intervention training kind of up and running. Do you think that's kind of an important aspect of the training to kind of get the perspective of someone who was affected by or know someone who, has mental illness?
That was liquid gold.
Mm,
To have the community come in and be a part of the training
mm-hmm,
was so important, especially to the cadets.
mm,
Because, I when I went to the training, I had 15 years on and still knew nothing about mental health and mental illness. I knew I could do an involuntary commitment. I
right.
barely knew how to fill out the paperwork, and I didn't word it correctly to do the patient any justice to truly get a
Mm,
good assessment or evaluation. They would
hmm
turn around and be in discharge very quickly.
Yeah.
But if you can get to the cadets very early on before bad habits form
hmm
and let them hear, look, you joined this profession to protect and serve.
hmm
Here's how you could help serve us, this population, right? And it was, I think the film captured it beautifully when you had cadets stand up and try to ask a question to
hmm
one of the members from NAMI, like, hey, I don't want to offend you, but when you have an episode, does it sound real to you? And they're trying to really navigate this very um, windy road of how do I even ask you a question and you're not in crisis,
Mm,
versus what's going to happen when I actually encounter somebody that's in a crisis. I want to
yeah.
be able to communicate in a way that's not offensive,
hmm
where I can get information so I know how to give resources.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, such a high percentage of emergency calls are relating to someone who's in some sort of a crisis or a behavioral issue. And it's kind of surprising that more time isn't taken within the training to emphasize some of those points. I mean, even as a paramedic, we have a mental health chapter where we go over, the pathophysiology and, this and that and what to do and how to help as best we can, even though there's not much we can do as a paramedic. But there really isn't nothing baked into the curriculum, as far as I'm aware. Maybe it's changed in the last couple of years, but to really emphasize some of those de-escalation techniques, because if you don't know what you're doing, odds are you're going to make the situation worse.
Oh,
What?
absolutely. And what was interesting, you mentioned the medics. So after we started the training, we invited the paramedics to come to the class as
Hmm.
well because we're encountering the same people in crisis.
Yes. Yeah.
Just sometimes they get dispatched through fire and EMS, and
Yes.
sometimes they get dispatched through law enforcement.
Hmm.
And what we noticed were, and when I was one of the trainers, I thought, okay, I'm going to put this paramedic through this role play. I'm going to pair him with an officer. And these medics were like just killing it. They were doing great. And I'm like,
Mm.
man, they must really get a lot of training on mental health. Like they're doing really good communicating and calming down this individual. And then when I talked to the medics, I'm like, hey, talk to me about your training. Like how much training do you get? And they're like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe an hour. Like we get, I'm like, you're kidding me. Like you're so good at communicating. They go, well, we're not relying on the things on our belt. We don't have a taser, a
Hmm.
gun, handcuffs. Plus, really the root of the problem could be a medical situation. So we need to really try to determine, is this a mental health crisis? Is this a medical condition? Is
Right.
this drug-induced psychosis? And all of this is going over the officers' heads. They're like, hold on, what? What do I need to be asking about medications? And am I allergic to like they were teaching each other so much knowledge and sharing that. The officers were learning how to communicate better and ask questions outside of just what's your name, what's your social, what's your
Hmm.
address, what's your phone. They were starting to ask about, are you on any medications? Do you see a doctor for anything?
Mm.
And then you had the medics starting to look around more and say, do you have any weapons?
Hmm.
They started to be a little bit more tactful instead of just walking down like Tim Tebow getting on a knee and touching you, right?
Right.
So it was great watching them work together. And who you train, I think, is important, right? It,
Certainly.
it doesn't matter if it's your guards, your officers at the magistrate or detention center,
Hmm.
your medics. It's anybody that's coming into contact with people that are in a crisis. De-escalation is really your way to avoid a negative outcome or a tragic outcome,
Hmm.
like we've seen in so many places.
Yeah, and I think as you're talking about the medics kind of being naturals, I think it's more of a skill that you have to develop as a medic. And it's also just the mindset of, almost like trying to get the root of the issue. Like why is the computer malfunctioning? Like let's dig deeper and do this and that. And I know for myself personally, and I'm curious to get your take, is part of for me when I was a medic, when I was showing up to a behavioral health issue, I would get frustrated because when the computer's not functioning right, it's hard, it's frustrating. Like you just want them to do the thing that's going to make them get better or get the medication or get the help they need. Did you notice that in yourself? And did you have any techniques or was it just kind of more of an acceptance issue when
Yeah,
you were in the field?
you know, well, when I first, started to encounter people with a mental health crisis, it was to me, I was scared. It
Mm.
scared me.
Hmm.
And it scared me because it was the unknown. They didn't
Yes.
train us in the academy at all when it came to mental health when I went through. They
Hmm.
didn't even train us how to fill out the form, what criteria we needed to do an involuntary commitment. You learn that from your FTO.
Okay.
Like they had a checklist. They were like, oh, emotionally disturbed person, we'll take that call. Okay, here's how you fill out the form. We got to take this one to the hospital. Check. Now you've been trained. I'm like, okay. No, I
Great.
haven't. I truly haven't because you filled the form out wrong, right? Um, but what I realized was when I did go finally to the training, I had spent time on the DWI unit. So you can't get angry at a drunk for being drunk, right? You expect them to act that way,
Mm.
right? So understand I'm going to get pushed back. I'm going to get
Lip.
somebody that's going to be non-cooperative, belligerent, right?
Uh-huh.
Sometimes, not every time.
Sure.
And you can't be upset at somebody that's experiencing mental illness that's in crisis. That'd be like you having allergies and you're sneezing. I'm like, Derek, dude, please stop sneezing. I'm trying to talk to you. It's not going to do any good by me saying that, right? So it's not going to do any good for me to tell somebody that's in a crisis, calm down, right? It's so you learn these pathways to de-escalation that's going to help you communicate. And part of that really is allowing that individual to be themselves in that moment, right? And not trying to control the situation, focusing on the person and not the problem, right? The problem's usually emotionally charged.
Mm.
and it will succeed, right? I mean, you'll get to a positive outcome. It just may take a little longer,
Right.
right? But the more you're able to be authentic, authentic and vulnerable in your communication style, empathetic, there's ways that you can de-escalate any situation. Takes time,
Hmm.
and it's different for children. It's different in adults. It's different for the elderly population. And it just takes time and understanding. And that's why I feel this training is so important for any first responder or people that come in contact with anyone that's in a mental health crisis.
Derek Hanley here, a photographer, a videographer, a veteran combat medic.
Derek Hanley is with us today.
We have on the line with us Derek O'Hanley. What a remarkable book. Obviously, you had no idea when you embarked on this journey of embedding with paramedics and, frontline responders. There was no way to know that a worldwide pandemic was on its way.
His goal was to document the day-by-day life-saving that they do. And now you can experience what it was like.
He's done a book that should be a coffee table book in homes and offices. It's something in the office that somebody's going to pick up, look at, and be moved by. This is the book.
Our military protects us overseas. Our first responders are the ones who protect us at home. And we need to start thinking about what we can do to take care of medics like we do for our military.
The book is Photos from the Front Line.
Photos from the front line.
Photos from the front lines.
Photos from the front lines.
So that's dope. It's DOHP.net. And you can find Derek's book there.
How was the training received initially? I can imagine myself, but how was it received? And then throughout your time with the department, how did you see the unit evolve and the department kind of accept these premises?
Yeah, great question. At first, when the chief wanted 10% of the department trained in CIT. So we were looking for volunteers to come to the training. That was fairly easy and fun because they wanted to be there. Then the chief, I think we were going through trying to be certified as a top tier department or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And with that comes, well, every officer should be CIT trained, right?
Mm.
So then the chief said, hey, he came to me and another officer says, hey, I want the whole department trained. It's going to be mandatory. I'm like, well, there's only like me and another guy that do the training. Like, how are we going to train 3,000 officers? I'll give you a couple of more officers. Okay, 4. And we heard things like, oh man, I'd rather retire than take that hug a thug, class. I don't want to take that. And I remember I was the same way, right? I said the same thing. And I'm like, well, hold on. I hear what you're saying. And if you want to retire, then go ahead, that's fine. But once you give it a chance, because I was kicking against the goats because my interactions with people with mental illness in the past was one, it came from a place of not knowing what I was dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being totally ignorant, to be honest with you, and not knowing what resources were
Mm-hmm.
available to me that would have helped not
Right.
just me, but the patient in the moment that needed the resources. So once you learn these things and you're better, you've got to, I hate saying you got a bigger toolbox for your tools, right? But it's true. You've
Yeah.
got an understanding, you've got knowledge, you got
Mm-hmm.
resources. So once the officers started coming through the training, we saw very little kickback. In fact, what we would get would be emails saying, hey, I just want to let you know I had a jumper the other night and I used the de-escalation skills and I talked him down, or I talked another person down that was highly agitated and I didn't have to fight with them and I didn't rip my uniform and I didn't have to be off injured. And we started getting all these success follow-ups, from calls that patrol was going to. So we didn't have to sell the program because it cost nothing. It sold itself. And officers were like, hey, this is some valuable training I can use. What made it work, Derek? It wasn't me being a trainer. It wasn't this magic concept of CIT training and de-escalation. It was the buy-in from the community saying, how can we be a part of this? Hey, we're a treatment provider. How can we make it easy for your officers to come to us? Hey, we're a hospital on the north side. How can we make it easy for you to come to us? What do you need? An office, a computer? We'll put some snacks in there. Bring us. And before we knew it, we had all these providers showing up at the training, offering to be a part of the solution.
Hmm.
So it truly was the community coming together and saying, hey, we understand this is not solely a criminal justice issue, right? This is a civil issue that police have to deal with, a social issue, and we can't get around that. But we're here to help and be a part of that. So it was truly amazing. I think San Antonio and Bexar County went through this perfect storm of transition where new leadership was coming into our local mental health authority. They rewrote policy, they built a new building. They invited me to come in and say, help us architect this. Like, what do you want to see when you pull into our parking lot? Like, what would help you navigate a patient in? What can we do to help that warm handoff go better? And I'm like, you're
Wow.
kidding me, right? And in return, we asked them, okay, help us
Mm.
understand what would make it easy for you. How
Yep.
about we put all their property in the property room instead of bringing it all with them? And now you've got to hold on to it and inventory it. And right, it was just, you had to have conversations. But I think most importantly, Derek, we had to learn to speak the same language
Mm.
because we didn't speak the same language
Hmm.
at all. Mental health world has their own language. Law enforcement talks gibberish, but when you come together for a common goal, I think the winner truly is the community.
You've now you've written books on these issues, right?
Have
Talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've written and who is targeting and what they can benefit by reading it.
Yeah, I've written a couple of books. The first one I wrote was Mental Health and De-escalation, a guide for law enforcement professionals. And the concept of the book was really I wanted to write some training concepts in there for law enforcement agencies that don't get the opportunity to go to a 40-hour CIT training. If you look at the makeup of law enforcement across the United States, the average department, about 85 to 90% of the agencies have 50 officers or less in
Mm.
law enforcement, right? So we're
Mm.
not talking the Chicago's, the Phillies, the
Yeah.
LA's, right? We're talking Pima County, like the little, right? Some smaller places. I wrote that to give them an opportunity to say, oh, wow, here's some ideas. I didn't know this. Let me learn about de-escalation. Let me learn about this 7-step approach on how to communicate and do active listening. Wow, I
Mm.
didn't know about this federal law called the Emergency Medical Treatment Active Labor Act, or EMTALA.
Hmm.
I didn't know about the treatment. I didn't know about the patient's rights. I didn't know that I couldn't be refused when I went to a facility because I've been getting refused anytime I try to walk in and say I got a mental health patient. I
Mm.
didn't know they couldn't do that, right? So I wrote this really as a guide for law enforcement on how to deal with de-escalation practices in the field and then use some training concepts in the book. What I didn't know is how well that book was going to be received.
Mm.
It went number one on Amazon
Wow.
and people were buying it crazy, but it was like family members buying it saying, hey, I appreciate you writing that chapter about an overall overview on mental health because I truly didn't understand why my brother get so angry so fast about situations, or I didn't understand, the true
Hmm.
the true diagnosis of what severe depression looks like, over time. And so there's a lot of information in that book. It did really, really well. The second book I wrote, I partnered with Scott Medlin. I don't know if you've spoken to him yet on a podcast. Great guest.
Mm.
Speaks about the 10 code mindset and resiliency for officers. But we partnered together on a book called 101 Questions to Ask Before Becoming a Law Enforcement Officer. And it's not just about questions to ask before becoming a law enforcement officer. It truly is a pathway throughout your career. So, what do I need to know about testifying in court? What about the evolving age of technology? What about mental health and wellness for officers? What about preparing for retirement? And it's kind of a workbook, right? There's 101 questions that you have to research, but at the beginning of each chapter, we're going to tell you what it's about. And at the end of each chapter, we give you a take of things that you should have considered when you were
Mm.
answering these. And what I ask people is after you purchase it or read it or get a copy of it or whatever, however you get it, after you fill it out, like wait a few years into your career and then go back
Mm.
and reread how you answered those questions. And you'll be surprised how many times you'll want to change your answer as you
Hmm.
gain knowledge about this career of being a first responder.
Wow. Powerful stuff. Talk a little bit about what it was like having the film crew follow you around and be all up in your grill, and then how was the film kind of received, and what's the impact been since it was been out?
Yeah, Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. Currently streaming right now on HBO Max. So if you have HBO Max, just search it, Ernie and Joe Crisis Cops. I would love for your viewers to watch it and then connect with me and let me know what they thought or how they felt. But they start we got a phone call. I received a phone call in 2016.
Mm,
We did a story for ABC News for Nightline about police using force against individuals in a mental health crisis that were
hmm
unarmed. And it was like three incidents in a row where police officers had used deadly force against somebody in a mental
mm,
health crisis. So Brian Pitts came to interview us and he rode with us for a few days. And, I think the story originally was going to focus on officers' use of force. But
mm,
then what he saw and what he captured was us kicking down doors, doing CPR on a lady that had taken, she was a wounded warrior,
mm,
getting help at BAMC. We
mm,
found her face down in her apartment on an overdose, working CPR on her until the paramedics got there. And what he saw was the way it affected us as first responders
hmm
and the family members and everybody involved
Yeah.
in these calls, right? The medics that have to respond. So when that story ran, it captured national attention. We got a story in the Atlantic called Policing with Velvet Gloves. That got to a filmmaker in Connecticut and who grew up really in New York and whose family is all in NYPD. And she
Mm,
called me one day and said, "Hey, I want to come down and do a ride along with y'all. I'm really interested in what you're doing down there." We're like, "Okay, come on." Not researching her. I just said, "Come on
on
down."
faith, blind faith.
Wish I would have researched her because she shows up like with just an iPhone, like no film crew, no audio people. I'm like, what is this? And she's like, got this this iPhone, and she's following us to calls. I'm like, man, what did I get myself into here?
Uh-huh.
But she was brilliant. If I'd have known, I'd have seen that her previous documentary was voiced over by Liam Nielsen, and she's a superstar when it comes to making documentaries. And she said, "Look, I just didn't want to invade anybody's space or privacy. I wanted to hear it and see it for myself."
hmm
But the very first call we went on, she told us, she goes, "Hey, there's a story here, guys. What you're doing is very special. You're
hmm
showing up in plain clothes, you're driving an unmarked car, you're talking to people like they're human beings, and you're not using, authority to talk down to them. You're not even handcuffing them. Like, I've never seen this approach. You're taking them to treatment facilities and not jail." So she came back with a legit film crew
hmm
and filmed us for 3 years. A lot of people don't know this. So
Wow.
she filmed for 3 years, had over 380 hours of film that she had to edit down to 96 minutes.
Mm,
So filmed for 3 years, released in 2019 at South by Southwest. And we get asked to go see the documentary. And it was going to screen 3 times in Austin for a whole week. And so I'm like, all right, yeah, we'll come up. So me and Joe drive up there, and like we're looking for like a warehouse or something. Like I don't know where they're going to show this thing at, right? Not knowing like this is a really big deal. Like these film festivals
oh
are the
yeah.
real deal. So we pull up in front of a draft house movie theater, and I'm like, "Is screening here?" And we hadn't seen it. We didn't know what to expect.
hmm
So we walk in and we see the filmmaker. She goes, "Hey guys, hey, sit down in the middle of the theater. People are starting to go in." I'm like, "Okay." So we sit down in the middle. Nobody knows who we are.
Right.
And here they come in with their popcorn and their soda and their candies. I'm like, "Oh my God, man, what if they walk out? Like, what if this is no good? Like, this is so scary."
Yeah.
And what's interesting, Derek, is something happened. People entered that theater to watch a film, and within 96 minutes, it's as if they knew you.
hmm
Because when it was over, they asked us to come up front and get on stage and interact with the audience. Standing ovation. We go up there, and we heard comments like, if Ernie and Joe would have responded to my man, I get emotional every time I talk about this.
hmm hmm
If Ernie and Joe would have responded to my house, my daughter wouldn't have hung herself in the
Mm,
closet. My husband wouldn't have, committed suicide in the garage with the car and a garden hose, or my wife wouldn't have jumped off a bridge.
mm,
We kept hearing all these stories, and I'm sitting there watching the film, going, "Why does my voice sound like that? Why is Joe so fat?" Like I'm totally missing
the
the
message. Yeah.
brilliance of the message that's going on, right? Because you're seeing yourself on this giant screen. Well, we get invited, 2 more times that week. It is the same thing. It's standing room only. The reception's phenomenal. The questions from the audience are heartfelt. People are crying. People want to hug you. I'm like, man, they didn't even know us an hour ago, and now the film won the film festival,
Mm,
which I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how big of a deal that was.
yeah.
But the filmmaker knew, and she was like, y'all need to get some decent clothes. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Spiff up a
Like,
little bit.
yeah, I spruce it up a little bit. And there is a Men's Warehouse, I'm sure, in San Antonio. And we're gonna go on a film tour. And we did, and HBO purchased the film very shortly after that. And we did our grand screening on HBO in November of 2019. They flew us into New York at HBO headquarters, and we screened it there. Originally, the film was signed for 3 years on HBO. It got really good feedback. They signed it for another 2 years. It expired last year. They said, nope, we're still
Hmm.
getting hits.
Yeah.
We want it for another 4 years. So it's been running. It'll run 9 years on HBO. It's going to run all the way through 2030
Beautiful.
right now. And we're still talking about it today because it's evergreen, right?
Yes.
This is something that's not going to go away. These
Nope.
are everyday problems in everyday neighborhoods. So yeah, it was intrusive having the
Hmm.
film crew show up while I was going through school. Joe's going through a divorce. We had 3 suicides on the department that year. I mean, a lot happened. Yeah, it was a huge undertaking, but man, so well worth it because when we talk to people today that have seen the film, so many of them were like, we were expecting this to feel like a ride along, and it wasn't. We got to see what it felt like for the officers and what their families go through
Hmm.
and what the department, how they deal with it. And it's just, it was special. It was really special.
Wow. What's been the reaction since it's come out? 'Cause I imagine um, other law enforcement officers, people from the community have seen it. What's been kind of the feedback that you've gotten in the years since its release?
Yeah, it's been all over the place, right? We've had agencies contact us, usually an officer saying, "Hey, we were about to start a mental health unit. Can you talk to me about how when you got started? Like, what
Hmm.
did you guys do? What barriers did you hit? How did you capture data? What data did you capture?" I mean, everybody's in a different place because the film, I think, won an Emmy. It really pushed it to the top as far as the importance of the message,
Hmm.
right?
And the
And the
reach, I
message
imagine, too.
and the reach was huge. I mean, we were screening in Australia and Germany and
Mm.
Ireland. We're zooming in at 1 a.m. because it's like 3 in the afternoon there. And I'm like, oh my God,
Top of the
man.
morning.
Yeah, top of the morning to you. Yeah. So yeah, it was the reach was far and still, because it's still showing today, like you yourself,
Yeah.
you were able to watch it and have a reaction to it. And because of that, we were able to have this conversation. So law enforcement has bought into the concept of crisis intervention, right? The federal government has. I mean, they put out grant dollars for agencies to apply to get these federal dollars to partner with a local mental health authority or behavioral health
Mm.
provider to try to make sure that a person in crisis is getting treatment and not being incarcerated.
Right.
So, I mean, there's the dollars are there. You always hope for there more dollars, more manpower, more
Hmm.
sustainability, more staffing. It's just what can you work with within your community and what kind of collaboration do you have to make these sustainable?
I think that's a good segue into kind of what you're working on now, huh? Talk a little about the Justice Center and how you're continuing to serve and spread this message and implement some of these things in actual departments.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned at the top, I'm the managing director at the Council State Government's Justice Center. So my portfolio right now, the majority of it is to oversee the Justice Mental Health Police Collaboration Program. So it's any grant that the Department of Justice, through the Bureau of Justice Assistance, has awarded a law enforcement agency to partner with a behavioral health provider to collaborate to bring services to those community members that have mental health struggles or go into crisis.
Hmm.
And that can look different in different communities. For example, it could mean putting a clinician in a car with an officer and doing a co-response. It could mean having a clinician and officer do follow-up calls that patrol maybe sends a report and says, hey, this happened last night. Can y'all follow up on it? Maybe it's putting a clinician in a dispatch center to where now the call can be transferred to a clinician to determine, do we need to send a mobile crisis response? Do I transfer this call to 988? Or do I handle this and help with maybe an intake? So it looks different based on what the needs of your community are. So, people, these agencies apply for these federal dollars, they get awarded them, and then my job is I've got a team that provides technical assistance to help them during their planning phase and implementation phase. And it's usually about a 3-year grant. And then the hope is we help them look to be sustainable because, again, federal dollars are seed dollars. So it's just putting a seed in the ground. Once you grow it, you got to start watering it, right? So you got to find the money
Maintenance.
to
Yeah.
sustain these. Now you can always reapply for more grants, but you're not always guaranteed to get them. So
Sure.
it's good way to during that time to collect good data, show cost savings, show reduction in force.
Hmm.
However you want to paint your picture, you can paint it.
Yeah.
But truly, what you're going to see is a connection between law enforcement and the community that has had a severe impact and gap for many years now that we're trying to repair that.
What do you think the future is going to look like? What's kind of the idealized state? Because you being one of the foremost experts on this concept, what would be the best case scenario in the future, and how would that look if you could be the one to design it from scratch, kind of today?
The future's so bright. I gotta wear
Because
sunglasses,
this is
right?
mental health is only
Um,
getting worse, as we know
yeah,
from the statistics. It's not going anywhere.
yeah. What we're seeing as far as trending right now is the reduction of law enforcement actually responding to
Mm-hmm.
crisis calls. So what do I mean by that? Communities, agencies, and organizations are beginning to stand up more community responder programs
Hmm.
than co-response models, right? So a community responder program would be a medic, whether it's an EMT or a paramedic, paired with maybe a social worker or a peer specialist, right? A peer specialist is somebody that has been in recovery and doing well and can communicate, knows the language and the obstacles of the mental health system.
Yep.
Um, Maybe you send them to the low level social determinants of health type calls
Hmm.
rather than law enforcement, which they do that in many places. Denver is one prime example with Denver Star. And what you will look at when you look at their data, for example, last year they responded to a little bit over 5,000 calls, and it's a medic and a social worker.
Nice.
And only once out of over 5,000 calls did they need to call law enforcement to come and assist them on scene. So when you look at putting those teams together,
Hmm.
one, you're sending the right response, right? You've got the right call, the right response, and then the right location to go to if you've got proper resources set up. And they're a lot cheaper to outfit than putting an officer and a paramedic and a clinician in a car.
Oh
And we
yeah.
did that in San Antonio. We had that type of response. So you've got a
Hmm.
full-fledged paramedic who could push medications.
Yep.
They could push sedation. They could give Versed. They could give ketamine. They could do the things to try to calm a patient down
Yeah.
to avoid abuse of force. You had a clinician there that do the assessment, staff it with a provider or psychiatrist to find out what's the best action to take with this patient. Then you had an officer there who could write the involuntary commitment, provide overall safety for the scene. Very expensive to put that kind of team together. And even more of a headache is who collects the data? Does the officer collect it?
Mm.
Does the medic? Does the social worker? Because all three use a different system, and those systems don't communicate with each other. So figure that headache out, right? And it can be done. That's what we do at the Justice Center. We help you figure out your headaches when you put these programs together because you're going to run into I need a memorandum of understanding. I need a data use agreement. No problem. We got templates for all that. How do we transfer calls from 911 to 988? And where's the liability in that? We don't want to get in trouble. We don't want to get sued, right? So that's kind of my job now. Is I have right now 179 police agencies to include tribal nations, rural, urban, under my purview that have gotten these grants. And now I got to make sure that they're all running good. So, yeah, small undertaking in my my new life that I retired from law enforcement, but it's a lot safer because I do it from the comfort of my own home.
For sure. Now you mentioned a couple things, and we just got to see some of the stories in the film, but your career spanned much longer time frame than what we were able to observe. Do you have any stories that kind of stick out in your memory that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Yeah, I mean, a few, right? I mean, I think
Sure.
one of the ones that's always going to be one of my favorites, and then because it was captured in the film, was the young lady on the bridge that
Mm,
wanted to jump. Her name is Kendra. You'll see us talking to her up there. And I think what made that encounter so special was the call that Joe and I had the month before with a jumper. He actually jumped in front of us. He was involved in a double shooting. He had gotten home, found his wife there with somebody else. He shot both of them. Because in Texas everybody has a gun. The guy that she was with had a gun. He shot him back. So he was bleeding. He got shot in the leg. He shot both of them, and then he drove to a bridge in San Antonio, and we got a call for a jumper. And as we're talking to him, we're getting information. Hey, he matches the description of this double aggravated assault in another county very nearby. So now it turned into, okay, now he's got a gun. We don't know where it is. He's on a bridge. He's been shot. And, now you're calling negotiator. I mean, it just turned into the biggest scene out there, right? And after hours of talking to him, they told me, hey, put a harness on. You need to go grab him. Like, first of all, I'm scared of heights. Let's establish that fact real quick.
uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, and as I tried to approach him, he turned over to Joe because Joe was the closest one to him. And he said, well, it's now or never. And he just jumped. And when you talk to somebody for a few hours, even though you understand, look, they were involved in a very serious crime,
Hmm.
there's going to be repercussions for this. We understand that.
Hmm.
You don't want to see somebody take their own life,
Hmm.
right? You just don't want to see it.
Yeah.
But like Joe says in the film, you see it and you can't unsee it. You
Hmm.
hear it and you can't unhear it because it sounded like a gunshot, right? Going off. Pow. I heard it and I was like, and Joe goes over and looks. I'm like, I ain't looking. But the reason I bring that up is that's what made that interaction with Kendra so special was we had that one fresh in our mind.
Hmm.
I'm like, man, this can't happen to us back to back. Like it's
Hmm.
just, we're better than that.
Yeah.
We got to do a better job. Like, and this situation was different, right? She's dealing with substance use and mental health.
Certainly.
He's dealing with crime and everything else. So in talking to her for a while, and you can see her reaction, she's very hesitant to engage with us. She sees the uniform, get
Yeah.
away from me, F you, I hate you. You guys never helped me. So it took some time, to de-escalate her and let her know, look, you can trust us. And in fact, I sat down
Hmm.
on the bridge, and she said when I did that, it's captured later in the film. She goes, why did you sit down? And I said, well, I'm scared of heights. She goes, well,
Mm.
I'm scared of life, but since you were able to face your fears at night, I guess I need to also. And I
Mm.
thought it was a beautiful interaction that we had afterwards. So yeah, spoiler alert, she didn't jump. But keep watching the film. There's other
Yeah,
stuff
yeah, yeah.
in
It's worth it for
there.
sure.
Yeah. So I mean, that to me, that
Mm.
story always is very close because we stayed in contact over the years, even when I retired.
Mm.
Because these are relationships that you form. Yeah, the badge got you there. It got you dispatched. But probably like you, Derek, I mean, you save people's lives, man, as a
Mm.
medic. That doesn't go away because you were wearing a badge. That's a bond you'll always have with somebody.
Yeah.
And they don't forget that. They don't care that that was your job that night. They care that you focused on them and not the problem, right? So, I mean, really all those kind of interactions are dear and near to my heart. The
Mm.
ones you always focus on, unfortunately, are the ones that you didn't get to on time,
Hmm.
or the phone calls you get where the mother's like, well, wish you'd have answered your phone an hour ago. It's too late. My son just hung himself. And I've had that call. I'm like, man, I was tied up. Like I was in the middle of
Hmm.
something. I was trying. And I remember, I had that happen and the mother hung up on me. And I was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Why couldn't I get to my phone sooner? And you focus on those. And it's unfortunate because there are so many
Yes.
positive outcomes, but you always wish you could do more,
Hmm.
right? As a
Hmm.
first responder, it's like, man, if I could have just been there sooner, if I could have just done this or that. So stories, yeah, I probably got too many of them to share. But I try now to focus on the positive. I understand that negative is going to happen. It's a part of this job and this career field, and you can't hold yourself accountable to those. It's not fair.
Sure. And I've only done a couple of these episodes, but in several of them, we've come across this same concept of the bad calls sticking out more than the good ones. And it's because your brain value tags these as more critical because you want to learn from them and you want to make sure you don't make the same mistake twice. And
Yeah.
it's value tagged higher in our brains for this purpose, but we should look at it as a body of work was what I thought was well put of there must have been countless more positive outcomes than negative ones throughout your career. Yet we don't seem to focus on that. But when we look at it as a total, our cumulative impact, it's massive. And I'm wondering too, when I saw that sequence of you guys and Kendra, obviously very moving and amazing, it made me think immediately of one of my folks I've worked with, Janine Baguette, she does critical incident response canine training. And she mentioned a very similar incident where there was a teenage girl on the side of the highway threatening suicide, threatening to run out. Cops are there, the circus has arrived. And then, they show up with the dog and the dog goes over and then she's petting the dog and then she's talking about the dog and they were able to de-escalate and get her to voluntarily come to the vehicle with the dog and then go and get treatment and this and that and it made me think of y'all's encounter and I'm wondering if you've encountered any of these kind of canine critical incident canines in your field and if you've seen them be effective kind of a thing.
Yeah, we partner with an organization called Canines for Christ. So they would bring out, most communities have access to them. You just gotta go on the website, and they have volunteers in all the different cities, and they can come out. They can do trainings. They can, come to roll calls, walk through dispatch because dispatch is. If you ever walk through there, usually the lights are all out. It's quiet. It's cold. Like
Yeah,
kind of
little
creepy.
cave. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a little cave, man. So it's good to have, some interaction with a furry friend every now and then. But even for the patients, and we actually approached our leadership with that concept because my partner Joe, in the film he talks about his diagnosis with PTSD,
Mhm.
and he qualified for a service dog. And this is an interesting story, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned this because I think it's important to understand like the mindset of leadership and just the stigma involved with those that have mental health. But he was awarded a service dog. He was supposed to go to Florida, spend a week or two there with the dog, and then he has to come back. And the dog has to stay with him 24/7 for like the first 3 months or something. I forget
Oh
what it was.
wow.
Yeah. And so he told, he got a letter for the dog. He told the chief's office, and they were like, hold on. If you need a dog to do your job, then you need to have a fit for duty. And it's like, hold on, what? Like, you talking about Joe? Like
Mm,
he's qualified for a service animal, but you're saying because he's gonna have to have one with him that he needs to do a fit for duty? Like that's so unfair.
mm.
And and first we were trying to get a dog just for the unit, and they're like, "Oh yeah, just go to the shelter and pick one out." And I'm like, nothing against shelter dogs are great dogs, and I'm all about rescue, but these are specifically trained service animals that go to schools and classes.
Right.
Like it's
You'd
not
have a
just
certain temperament.
it's
Yeah.
not like go pick one you think is cute. Like there was no education, no knowledge of how important canine therapy or animal therapy, whether it's equine therapy, really is. Not that I could bring a horse on a call, but how
That'd be
important,
rad.
yeah, well, it is San Antonio. It's possible. But I just think leadership just didn't really understand what we were trying to do for the community and for the officers, bring them out to in service. And it's just animals have a way of just soothing and calming things
Hmm.
down for people. Now,
Hmm.
sometimes they scare you, and you got to make sure that that animal's not going to be scary to you. But
Yeah.
yeah, there was a lot of pushback when it came to trying to get an animal on the unit, and we tried two different approaches. One to just be a companion dog, therapy dog for us to take on calls, and one was Joe could have a service dog. And we were told kind of no on both fronts.
Hmm.
It was surprising. I think now maybe if you were to reapproach it, knowing what we know now,
Okay.
maybe. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, for us, that was a difficult ask.
Hmm. Interesting. Now, for folks who may be watching this who maybe are in or law enforcement or fire or any of the first responder agencies, who maybe haven't seen the film or haven't come across your work or just learning about crisis intervention type of a thing, what kind of messaging might you have for folks who are out there who are intrigued, who understand the problem, but maybe don't know how to get things started or how to get things off the ground? What would you recommend?
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. I want to say that foremost, and thank you to your families because they're involved in your service as well. For me, it was getting involved. I got voluntold
Hmm.
originally, and I hate that, but I love that. And what I wanted to tell you and share with you, Derek, was the lady that made that statement. I had to respond to her house several times, and I had to hospitalize her son.
Mm,
And about 6 years ago, he passed away.
mm,
And it wasn't at the hands of law enforcement. He had skin cancer. And his mom asked me to speak at his funeral, right? So you talk about going full circle.
yeah.
And here I am kicking and screaming, I don't want to go. Get me out of that, to meeting this incredible human being, helping her son, and then speaking at his funeral, right? So take advantage of these opportunities that you get. Focus on people and not the problem. Focus on connection and not correction, right? The problem will correct itself in time, but connection lasts a lifetime. And you will build these relationships. Understand that boundaries are important, but you people in this career field are service minded and truly joined to help. I can't think of a better way to help than getting outside of your comfort zone, right? Meeting a very vulnerable population that has a difficult time navigating the mental health system, the criminal justice system, and you could be that conduit to help them be successful. So I would say look for opportunities to get involved with NAMI or other partners in the community.
Hmm.
Find out how you can be a part of the solution. Get your leadership, to listen, maybe put together a presentation for them to look at. Reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anybody that wants to have a conversation. I love it. I get excited. It's like it brings me back to when we first started. We were scared. We didn't know what we were doing, but people look at San Antonio and say, "Man, it was gold standard." I'm like, "Yeah, but it took 17 years to get there. Like, we made a lot of mistakes."
Right.
So, hopefully that I can share that, with others that are trying to upstart a co-response team or community responder team. But remember who you serve, right? Remember why you joined this career field. I mean, I stood in a line of 5,000 people, right, for 2 days to get a shot at an application to join the police department. I wasn't drafted. I
Hmm.
basically begged my way to get in. And then I fought tooth and nail to graduate to provide a service to my community. Don't forget that, right? Don't lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing. I understand that this job can make some people cynical. It happens. Go back to your roots. And that's why I love that second book I wrote. Go back to your roots because the questions in there are why. Why are you doing what you're doing?
Hmm.
And I think it keeps things in perspective.
Awesome. As we kind of wind down here, Ernie, I was wondering also, since you've been in this field for so long, are there any like nonprofits or folks that are doing this work that people maybe wouldn't know about that you could give voice to or that could use more support, donations, things like that?
Yeah, there's so many, and there are different ones in all the communities. I think, nationally, if you look at the National Alliance on Mental Illness, they're broken into three parts, right? You have a national organization, then you have usually a state chapter, so like Texas NAMI, and then you have an affiliate, so San Antonio NAMI. So how those dollars, travel down from national to state to local affiliates, it's few and far between, right? NAMI has really one fundraiser all year, and it's a walk. And it's once a year, usually September, October. You just got to find it in your town or city,
Mm,
and that's really their one chance to raise funds to sustain these programs and their educational programs, their advocacy. You go up to the state capitol. You talk about initiatives to to your legislators. You try to get them to listen of like, hey, what's our strategic plan moving this forward this year? They're a great organization as a nonprofit. First Help, if you're looking for how to help support first responders, because again, we talked about how the high rate of suicide is for first responders. A great nonprofit, uh, Cop Line, like there's so many good ones
Mhm.
out there. Warrior's Heart, another good one that you can look at. So, think about what's in your community and support something that's in your community. Put
Mhm.
your dollars. Like I mean, for years I used to like, man, I'm going to support all these kids in Africa and all this, and I was doing all this for World Vision. I remember him. I talked to my pastor one day. He's like, "Yeah, that's great, Ernie. That's great. Save the world, but what do you What do you putting into the community here? It's
Mm.
just all over there, which is good. That's fine. But what are you doing locally?"
Sure.
And it kind of puts things in perspective. And it's no knock against how it's your money. You decide to do what you want with it. But nonprofits, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. I mean, the Justice Center where I work, it's a nonprofit.
Hmm.
So we hope to get to become those TA providers from the Department of Justice, or a state might reach out to us to give us a contract to create curriculum. Or so, it can be a struggle, working even at the level I'm working at, because you're always on the lookout for somebody to have a generous heart.
Hmm. Certainly. Wow. Ernie, you got anything to plug? You got any things coming up?
Yeah, there's some things in the works. Yeah, I'm working with, I don't know if you know Jason Harney, if you've interviewed him yet. He's a filmmaker. Man, he's done a lot of films. But Is There Something Going On at Home is a really good documentary
Mm.
that's streaming right now. And it's all about first responder families.
Hmm.
And like, man, is there something going on at home with your loved one?
Mm.
Be on the lookout, because it could be happening right in front of you, you not know it. But we're looking at doing a film on the risk of cardiac risk to first responders,
Hmm.
because the number one cause of death for first responders is a cardiac event, cardiac arrest,
Wow.
heart disease.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking at putting a documentary together that would follow a dispatcher, a firefighter, a paramedic, a police officer, bringing in a lieutenant out of Austin that is also a cardiologist. So
Hmm.
he's a reserve lieutenant for the sheriff's department and a
Wow.
full-time cardiologist.
Hmm.
So he understands, Sigma Tactical is his group. So he understands the importance of cardiac, just your heart welfare, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at health and wellness. There's always something seems to be in the back burner. So yeah, just keep up with this, because I travel a lot. I speak in a lot of different places, and my hope is that if I'm somewhere near where you are, that we could both make an effort to come and meet each other.
Certainly. I would be honored, my man. Where can people find you, Ernie?
LinkedIn or Twitter. Twitter is estevens0845. You'll never guess what my badge number was, right? That's everybody. Or on LinkedIn, Ernest Stevens. I think that's where we've been connected for quite
Sure.
some time. I usually can respond same day. So if you have an event or you just want to reach out and talk, just let me know. I'm happy to connect with you.
Awesome. Ernie, thank you so much, man, for your time. I really appreciate it. What a blessing you and your work has been for your community and the world at large, I'm sure, as a result of this. So society owes you and those who do this work a debt of gratitude that can probably never be paid, but I'll at least have my gratitude that I can offer you in this moment. So thank you so much. Thank you for being on the show and being such a cool dude. I really appreciate it. And yeah, again, really honored.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your kind words, and I appreciate your platform that you're using to elevate this topic. And I think Muhammad Ali said it best, right? Our service to others is the rent that we pay for our home here on earth.
Hmm.
And I love that he said that, and that rings true, I think, for every first responder. So thank you, Derek. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ernie. You've been listening to the Dope Signal. Tune back in for the next episode.